We've all been there, wanting nothing more than to go to bed after a long day at school or work. But do you ever wake up knowing that you didn't get enough sleep, just wishing that you could have slept better? And then you get up and get on with your day, tired, groggy, lethargic, just wondering how am I going to make it the rest of the day? Only to come home and realize that not getting adequate and quality sleep is really starting to affect your quality of life. You realize that staying focused in school is harder and harder with less and less sleep. You might even start to feel anxious and depressed with so much to do during the day and not enough time to rest at night. And that's exactly what they wanted to find out. The purpose of this study was to evaluate the relationship between sleep deprivation, sleep quality, and daytime sleepiness, and quality of life, perception of academic environment, and the symptoms of depression and anxiety.
The experimental design for our study consisted of 1,350 randomized students from 22 different medical schools. They were each given a survey questionnaire regarding 5 different domains, and those domains included the ones that you see below. Those are daytime sleepiness, sleep deprivation, anxiety and depression symptoms, and their quality of life. For each of these domains, we had a different test and scale that was associated. For daytime sleepiness, we use the Epworth Sleepiness Scale to determine the likelihood of the student falling asleep in different day-to-day situations. In regards to sleep deprivation, we use the Sleep Deprivation Index to compare the amount of sleep they got during the weekdays versus the sleep they got on the weekends. For depression, we use the Beck Depression Inventory to look at different symptoms and attitudes that are associated with depression. And for anxiety, we use the State Trait Anxiety Inventory to detect not only the presence of anxiety, but also the severity. And lastly, for quality of life, we use the VerisQ test. And this test was specifically created to evaluate quality of life in students going into a health profession. So that's something to keep in mind. And this test looks at 4 different domains that impact the quality of life, including physical health, the different learning environments that the students are in while in school, different psychological aspects, and their time management. And each category was assessed with its respective scale, and students would receive a score for each domain of the questionnaire mentioned earlier. And along with that, each score was also paired with information to explain the meaning of the result. And as a general rule for the first 4 tests, the lower the score, the lower the severity. So if a student had a lower score on the Epworth Sleepiness Scale, then that means that they had a lower severity of daytime sleepiness. However, for the quality of life, the VerisQ test that we used, if there was a lower score, then that represents a lower quality of life experienced by the student. And after these tests and scores were given, the students were offered guidance and the opportunity to contact our research group for more information.
All right, the Epworth Daytime Sleepiness Scale that we used measures how tired the participants were throughout the day. And this is measured on a scale of 0 to 24. And as Lauren mentioned earlier, the lower the value, the less sleep deprived the participants felt. And so the 0 to 10 is a more of a daytime, an average daytime sleepiness. So basically just normal day, not too tired, you're able to go about your day and do what you need to. 11 through 15 is a more excessive feeling of sleepiness. And then the 16 to 24 is a severe feeling of sleepiness, like you're barely able to go about your day, barely able to, for us, go to classes and not fall asleep. So our results here actually surprised us a little bit because we were expecting that males would be more lethargic throughout the day than females. However, the results show that females are generally more sleep deprived than males. Okay, this graph here represents the relationship between the ESS, the Epworth Daytime Sleepiness Scale, and the Beck Depression Inventory. And so these different colors here represent those three categories in the ESS. So white is the average or normal daytime sleepiness, gray is the excessive, and black is the severe. And so our results show a trend is what we have found in the amount of sleep that someone gets and their susceptibility to being depressed. And so the more sleep you get, the better your day usually goes, the more focused you are. And so the less susceptible you are to depression. And it's the same when you get, or just the opposite, when you sleep less, you are more susceptible to depression. Okay, now with our quality of life, this graph is broken down into 4 different categories, and those are the time management, the psychological, the physical, and learning environment, all those different aspects of our lives. And once again, this is in relationship to the ESS, or the Epworth Daytime Sleepiness Scale. And every one of these different categories, these parts of our lives, shows a trend where if we get more sleep, we have a better quality of life in that particular category. And this is definitely what we were expecting. We predicted that the more sleep you get, the better life is, and the less groggy you are throughout the day.
All right, let's talk about a few more graphs here. Okay, this first one is going to be our sleep deprivation index. And like Lauren talked about a little bit earlier, that is just basically the amount of hours slept per weekday or weekend that each of our subjects had. So you can see on graph A here, first we're going to be talking about that x-axis, sleep hours on weekdays. And then, of course, our y-axis is how many subjects. It follows a normal bell curve pattern. Most of our subjects are getting 6 hours of sleep on a normal weekday. I want to know who's sleeping more than 13 hours there on that far right-hand side on a weekday, because I mean, that would be awesome during medical school. Maybe that's too much sleep. And then, of course, to the right, there's our second graph, sleep hours on weekends, our x-axis, and subjects, of course, still on the y-axis. We see a bit more of a spread here. Maybe some partiers over there on the 4 hours of sleep a night, more people getting up to 12 or 13 hours, catching up on sleep on those weekends. Graph C, right below graph A, here's the difference between slept hours on weekends and weekdays, and then of course the subjects. So we're just taking the people that had normal sleep on weekdays, how much they slept on weekends, subtracting those, and just figuring out how much that is. With a little bit more of a spread, there's some people that are in the negatives. Maybe they're sleeping less on the weekends than on the weekdays. Again, those partiers that I was talking about. And then the last graph, graph D, is the Epworth sleep scale. So that's that ESS score that Trent and Lauren were both talking about a little bit earlier, where people rank themselves on that. And this, of course, the subject percentage is the y-axis. Again, it follows the bell curve. Most people are going to be in that 10 to 12 range, with people as low as 0 and as high as 22. So those people in the higher range are going to be falling asleep in normal daily activities, with people in the lower end being awake and things like that. Let's take a look at our final graphs here. So this is going to be talking about anxiety in relation to that ESS score. And so we've broken up our anxiety graph into 2 different things. We have our state anxiety and our trait anxiety. The state anxiety is, like this says, a physiological and psychological response to an adverse situation. Let's say coming up, we have a physiology exam on the weekend. That's going to give us some anxiety, right? Of course, we do have a physiology exam this weekend, so I'm sure we're all feeling that anxiety and stress from that. But this is basically how we react to those kind of situations, whereas trait anxiety is more personality linked. It's what we kind of inherit, the way we respond to situations that we can't control and things like that. So the graph here follows a similar pattern to the depression graph, and it would be an inverse pattern to those other graphs that we saw linking to lifestyle and things like that. So you can see that the people who linked lower on the ESS scale had less chances of being full of anxiety. And so that follows that linear relationship where the higher you are on the ESS scale, the more anxiety you're feeling. So we can see that from these results that when we get less sleep, we're going to feel more anxious, not only for things that are coming up like tests, exams, boards, but also for how we just react in normal situations. Say we're driving down the road in a car, maybe we're going to feel anxiety from that. So the less sleep that we get, the more we're going to feel that kind of anxiety.
Our study is significant because it is a reflection of the academic culture that surrounds medical students, and if anything, students in general. This study wanted to confirm the relationship between sleep quality and sleep deprivation against quality of life, students' daytime sleepiness, perception of academic environment, and symptoms of depression and anxiety. Lack of quality sleep leads to a trifecta of mental, social, and academic repercussions, often affecting students' ability to get through a normal day of activities without feeling the need to drink a Monster or any other energy drink. Think about how when you feel when you get 7 to 8 hours of sleep versus when you go to bed at 3 a.m. and have to wake up 3 to 4 hours later. Your REM cycle is disrupted, your inner zen is lost, and you have become a walking zombie. And even if you don't necessarily feel this way right now, eventually your habits will catch up to you. So every time you go to bed late, every time you think just one more page to read, or I'll watch that movie right now, think about how low your ESS score will be, how high your depression and anxiety score are, seeing that these factors are directly related to the quality of sleep and sleep deprivation. Sleep is just as important as eating and breathing. Don't let your future employer see the bags under your eyes, because all they'll see is the 80% that you're currently giving to stay awake versus the 110% potential that you have if you simply discipline yourself to A, develop a good sleep schedule, and B, get quality sleep. Thank you.